dear Book welcome back to my channel and welcome to A Closer Book. This is a series where I talk about 3 of my recent reads. Today I'm going to be discussing a novel and 2 nonfiction books. First up is Commonwealth, a novel by Ann Patchett. And I have several Ann Patchett books on my TBR, and this is the first of those books that I read. This one is a novel about a family's history, about the members of the family, how they relate to each other, how they see themselves, and how those relationships change over time. Commonwealth is a layered story about a strangely blended family and how the members of the family grow apart, grow together, grow more cynical, and grow in their understanding of the love that pulls them together, but also tortures them in the process. Commonwealth in the title refers to the Commonwealth of Virginia, which is where the novel is set and where a lot of the characters' defining moments take place. It is also the title of the book within a book, which is the novel that another person outside of the family writes about these family members and that causes them to change the way they look at themselves and how they remember situations. The novel takes place in a series of stop-and-go narratives, settling on no one character, but progressing kind of like a film reel that allows you to get a complete picture of what is happening from lots of different perspectives. But while this technique allows you to have a bird's eye view of the situation, it also prevents you from developing any real intimacy with any one character. So after about 300 pages, I was still trying to remember which set of siblings went with which parent and which branch of the family was being discussed. And I don't think that that is something that should still be happening so far into the novel. And yet some of the quotes that the author gives to the characters towards the end of the novel allows me to see that this was actually her literary device. This was how she told the story, allowing you to probably still go through some of the confusion that other family members have. And it's almost impossible not to see her brilliance in anticipating my questions as a reader and using the characters to answer them. In the flipping back and forth between seeing the parents as young adulterers and then seeing them as they age and then moving back to their youth, it's as though they're escaping life's timeline and the mortality it leads to by living inside the present instead. And she gives this wonderful quote to Bert, who's one of the parents, and that is on page 314. So a little bit after I figured out who the children belong to. And it says, Bert was as old as the rest of them, but age arrived at different rates of speed in different ways. And then another quote, just 4 pages later, on page 318, it says, for Bert, the past was always right there with him, and so he assumed that everyone else felt that way. And I felt like that was such a brilliant way that the author showed the timelines and showed the movement of time for the very anticlimactic way in which the author doesn't resolve much of the issues that she poses. She gives this musing to Franny, one of the siblings in the book. In the last line, she says, now she understood that at some point far out in the future, there would be a night just like tonight. And she would remember this story and know that no one else in the world knew it had happened. She had needed to keep something for herself. So it's as though this author has created this world, painted this picture, and is giving you the opportunity to finish it the way you want to as the reader, so that your experience with the novel is very different from anyone else's. While I didn't absolutely love that, I felt like it was brilliantly done. The characters in this book are not particularly likable or charming, and the author wrote flaws into each one, so they appear to be multidimensional people, and you are forced to figure out whether you want to choose sides and which side you really should choose. So in that process, it is most likely that you will identify with the person that is probably most similar to you. But again, the author responded to it by giving these words to one of the siblings, and she talks about her step siblings and their extended family and how she relates to her family members and also the people that they have chosen to embrace into their lives. She says, the son she liked the least had the wife she liked the most, and vice versa. And so these complex relationships force these family members together even when they don't want to. Overall, I felt like this was a stunning look at family and relationships, and I am looking forward to reading the other Ann Patchett books that are on my TBR. Then we get to Scratch by Manjula Martin, and this is a collection of essays by writers about writing. The subtitle is Writers, Money, and the Art of Making a Living. And These essays are by some authors that I am familiar with and others that I have no idea who they are. We have Jonathan Franzen, Cheryl Stray, Jennifer Weiner, Roxanne Gay, and others that I am familiar with, but then there are others that I'd never heard of. But it was a very complete, I think, look at the financial world of being an author, being a writer. So in this one, authors discuss how to get published, how to get paid, and whether authors should get paid for everything they write, or if that voice is compromised when it becomes commercialized. As an aspiring author myself, I was very interested to read what these famous authors have to say about this subject. In her conversation with Manjula Martin, Cheryl Stray talked about her first $100,000 advance that she got for one of her books. And she explained that $100,000 is really installments paid over time. The first $25,000 installment that she received was when she signed her publishing contract. And her agent took a cut, and she had to pay taxes, and she had to repay all the debt that she had racked up while trying to get this novel sold. So even though it sounds like a lot of money, it really isn't after you start thinking about and talking about all of those expenses that come along with being a writer. This book was quite insightful, and it reinforced a lot of the things that I have heard elsewhere in the publishing industry, and I know firsthand how difficult it can be getting to this place, but also I assume that just getting there doesn't mean that all your problems get solved. Jennifer Weiner, I'm not sure how her name is pronounced, but she also reinforced that idea. She said you don't become an author to become rich. It is something that happens along the wayside for a lot of authors, but it's not something that you can actually aspire to because there's so much uncertainty. Jonathan Franzen came to the conversation from a slightly different angle, and he actually said that publishing houses should not pay these huge advances to big name novelists, because for every big advance that is paid to a famous writer, there are several other new authors who might not get an opportunity to get their novel published because so much resource is being pumped into these big named authors. What he did say though is that these famous authors are the ones whose books sell thousands of copies in the first couple of weeks, make a lot of money on the hardcover printing, so it supports the industry and allows these publishing companies to actually give advances to these new writers at some point. So it is a kind of a catch-22 about whether it's appropriate or whether it's necessary and what the alternative could be. So this was a really fascinating look at the underbelly of publishing, about what it really means to be a writer, not just the glamorous world that we hear about, book signings, book parties, hardcover publications, big advances, Harry Potter-esque sales. That actually doesn't happen often, and it only happens to a few of the thousands of aspiring writers. So this scratch collection is a fascinating read, I think, for anyone who has those author aspirations. And just to kind of give a little bit of a reality check on what exactly being an author, becoming a paid author entails. And then we come to The Physics of Everyday Things by James Kakalios, who is a physics professor. And in this book, he reviews the entire high school / college physics curriculum by following a normal person going through his everyday life in a modern city with modern technology at his fingertips, and showing how physics principles are at work in a lot of the machines that we use in our everyday lives. Kakalios reviewed everything. It goes from the pendulum principle in clocks, to the alarms that wake us up, to the resonance theory in the MRI scans that a person might use if they go to a hospital for testing, and the credit card technology that we use to pay for it all. What makes this book different from a generic science lesson is that first Kakalios described the event, and then he shows the principle at work. When I was in college studying physics, we did the opposite. First we learned the principle, and then we learned the application. So this, I think, was a really good review of a topic for someone who has some background about the subject and is now looking to see applications in modern world. And so I would recommend this as a book for someone who is taking a college physics course and who wants to see physics at work in their everyday lives. like the title suggests. I like that this was a quick, simple, easy, reader-friendly review of something that I already knew. I learned some trivia from this book that are geeky things that I'll probably use in my conversations as I move forward from reading this book. The book format was also really appealing because it is a short read. It's just over 200 pages, and there aren't a lot of illustrations in the book. There are a few diagrams that I think are used to kind of cement a theory in your mind if you're a little foggy on it, but there weren't a lot of distracting drawings and graphs. So it was a more literary description of something that a lot of us probably learned in a more visual way. The target audience for this book was a little unclear. I felt like I understood the book because of my background as an engineer, but I wasn't sure if someone who didn't understand physics principles would actually be able to interact with this book the way it might have been designed. So someone who didn't know how a pendulum worked, I don't think that they would have been able to understand it based on what was presented in this book. So while I felt like the book was for me, the language wasn't aimed toward me. So that was a little confusing, and it did affect my overall appreciation of the book. But in general, I like this. I would recommend it to someone who is taking a physics course as a resource for them to understand the application of what it is that they are studying. So that's it. That's a closer book at these 3 recent reads. Let me know in the comments below if you've read any of them and if you want to chat. So thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, happy reading. Bye.